The Thunder of Silence. Introduction. Number 1. The purpose of this book is to set you free from man whose breath is in his nostrils. Number 2. The only real strength there is in conscious union with awareness and in the realization of the true nature of spiritual power. Number 3. It is not possible to get free from anything. Number 4. The only complete freedom is a freedom in consciousness. Number 5. Whatever depths you and I have known, that was the experience necessary for us to reach the heights. Number 6. Consciousness does not operate through physical might or mental powers. Number 7. Live with these truths until your materialistic state of consciousness begins to yield and surrenders itself as the transcendental consciousness takes over mind and body and the everyday experience of your life. Number 8. The purpose of this book is to reveal transcendental consciousness and thereby develop individual consciousness by dwelling and continuously abiding in the Word. Part 1. Chapter 1. Number 1. Living in the mortal realm, we are under the laws of matter, the laws of economics, the laws of race, religion, nationality. Living in spiritual truth comes through a conscious activity within our own consciousness that is made only by grace. Number 2. To be rid of the ills of humanhood, we must also be willing to relinquish the pleasures and profits of humanhood in order to become acquainted with our spiritual identity. Number 3. Now is always presenting itself to us with fresh opportunities. Number 4. I and my consciousness are one. I look in no other direction than to the infinite invisible. Then what appears from within I share. Number 5. This transition brings about a change from faith in the visible to faith in the infinite invisible, that which can never be seen, heard, tasted, touched, smelled, or even thought or reasoned. Number 6. There must come a time when thought stops. A blank comes, almost a vacuum, and into that vacuum rushes the very presence and power of consciousness. Number 7. That is the moment when we perceive that even when we cannot know it, or feel it, or think it, there is an invisible presence, an intangible something, which nevertheless is operating, and then from that very invisibility will come into expression everything necessary to our unfoldment. Number 8. If we think ourselves to be something, we gravely err. It is only when we come to that place of self-renunciation that our selfhood reveals itself. Silence is the way. Chapter 2. Number 1. All the suffering the world is experiencing is because of a sense of separation from consciousness. Number 2. Karmic law is not consciousness. Number 3. Ultimately, there comes a day when we actually attain a realization of the consciousness that dwells in us. When we come face to face with it, then we are no longer under the law of karma. We are living by grace. Number 4. Consciousness never rewards virtue. It never punishes error. Error punishes error. No one can violate law and not be punished for such violation. The fault lies not in consciousness, but in individual misperception of the law, of the nature of the law. Number 5. It is right and proper to be an honest and healthy human being, but that has no relationship to the spiritual path, nor to our ultimate destiny, which is to return to conscious awareness. Number 6. Exercise. What is consciousness? Number 7. Our meditations do not influence consciousness. All we can do is recognize that which already is. Number 8. No act or deed or thought of ours is powerful enough to prevent consciousness from operating and continuing to operate. Number 9. The law of karma stops operating as soon as we drop the personal sense of self. Number 10. We come to acknowledge that we did not live an hour ago, and that we cannot live an hour hence. The only time we can live is now. Number 11. Everything we do today determines something that is going to happen in our life tomorrow, or tomorrow's tomorrow. Number 12. In our relationship with one another, we live completely in the sense that we are one. In such a bond, no one is thinking of taking advantage of anyone else. No one is thinking in terms of self-gain or self-aggrandizement or any form of self, except the idea of a sharing of the self. Number 13. The way to break the karmic law is by living constantly in an atmosphere of love and forgiveness. Number 14. In the spiritual realm, there are not two powers operating. There is only a state of grace, which is itself the law of elimination to every phase of materiality. Number 15. I am interested only that the soul of every person here on earth be revealed. The soul will remain here eternally. Number 16. There is something more to life, and that is life. Chapter 3. Number 1. Consciousness is not a power that can be manipulated by man. Number 2. Consciousness is understood to be no power, because there are not two forces combating one another. Consciousness has no opposite and no opposition. Number 3. When we have the actual conscious realization of I, pain, lack, and limitation fade away. Number 4. Nothing is accomplished by struggling and resisting physically or mentally, because struggling only increases what seems to be a discordant power in our experience. Number 5. It is you and I who falsely entertain a sense of power, of lack and limitation, which the thing itself does not have. Number 6. We have to lose all desire for the visible in the realization that we live not by that which is visible, but by that which is invisible, and then we shall find that the infinite invisible will produce in our experience the persons, things, circumstances and conditions necessary to our daily life. Part 2, Chapter 4. Number 1. That which is formed of consciousness is never born. It is merely an emanation of consciousness, which not only has no beginning, but has no ending, because as long as there is consciousness formed. Number 2. The sin that crept into Eden was the acceptance of two powers and the belief in a dual universe. Number 3. Only in the realm of being are we outside of thoughts where is. Number 4. Mental creation is not a creation of consciousness, but a creation of the false carnal mind. Number 5. The entire sense world, made up of that which we see, hear, taste, touch and smell, has no existence whatsoever except as a creation of this carnal mind, which by its very nature is unreal and has nothing to support it except thoughts. Number 6. We do not have the capacity to think the thoughts of consciousness. But when the mind, in rising above thought, has been transcended and silence supersedes, consciousness can utter its word through us. Number 7. It is only the belief in two powers that traps us into vacillating between pairs of opposites. Abiding in our inner being, realizing that there is only one power, frees us and brings us peace. Number 8. Our mind is restless only when we are thinking about things or persons, either in terms of good or evil, but the mind is at rest when we surrender all such concepts. Then I am back at the center of my being, where all power is. Number 9. It is only when we do not desire wealth or harmony any more than lack or discord, but seek only the original and primary consciousness, that we rise above these opposites into eternal life. This state of consciousness is a contentedness with being. Number 10. There is only one universe, and that is the real universe. There is only one you, and that is the real you. Chapter 5. Number 1. Man has been divided into 3 states of consciousness: the material, mental, and spiritual. Number 2. The mind is an instrument for something higher than itself, and that something is the one self. Number 3. The external appearance is always mind-formed. As we sow mentally, so shall we reap materially. Number 4. Mind is the essence and substance of which matter is formed, and it appears to us as form or effect. Mind is the principle, the life, and the law of all material and mental form. Mind is the basic substance, but matter is the name given to mind when it takes form. Number 5. When soul becomes the activity of the mind and appears as form, then all form is spiritual and can be multiplied. When we rise above the level of mind and thought to the silence, that is when I becomes the activity and substance appearing as matter or form. Number 6. Once the mind becomes permeated with truth, truth becomes the substance and essence of all form, and then the form can be multiplied, but it can only be multiplied because it is not matter. Number 7. The creations of consciousness present themselves to our human sense as physical, material, and limited. This is because our mind interprets only what we can become aware of through our senses. We do not behold what is, we behold the interpretation of our mind. Number 8. In the human scene, the mind creates duality. In the spiritual scene, the mind is not a creative faculty, but an avenue of awareness. Number 9. The whole secret lies in making the transition from a thinking, plotting, planning, scheming mind to a mind at rest in a state of awareness through which divine ideas can flow. Chapter 6. Number 1. There is no such thing as carnal mind, because there is one mind, and it is unconditioned. Number 2. That which we call carnal mind is merely a belief in two powers. Number 3. As we abide in the Word and let the Word abide in us, life is lived without effort and without taking thought. Chapter 7. Number 1. No one can free himself from the belief in two powers until he is willing to relinquish his human judgments and look out upon the world with an unconditioned mind. Number 2. When a person begins to realize that alcohol, tobacco, has power neither for good nor evil, he loses all taste for it. Number 3. Whatever the appearance, it is merely a form of some sort, nothing but a blank until you imbue it with qualities. Chapter 8. Number 1. Question. How can I stop thinking about and believing in good and evil? Answer. The secret is in the attainment of the unconditioned mind, through which the soul functions as life and experience. Number 2. The body reflects whatever we accept in our mind. It is the mind which becomes the avenue through which the body takes on the beliefs of the world. Number 3. Who said conditions are good or evil? In reality, good and discord are just a belief. Number 4. All human conditions of whatever nature exist only as a belief in the human mind. Number 5. When you feel consciousness stirring within you, you can be assured that whatever appearance of lack or limitation before you will melt away. Number 6. We do not attempt to improve or correct the human picture. Number 7. The one who lives by grace is he who has given up the belief in two powers. Number 8. There is no discord and no purity. There is just consciousness. Number 9. Consciousness forms this universe out of itself. Number 10. We look right through the eyes until we see way back of them to where the light of consciousness sits enthroned. In that state of consciousness, the light takes over, flooding consciousness with tranquility and peace, and then harmony becomes apparent and tangible in experience. Number 11. In the infinite way, we do not make suggestions, and there is no mental contemplation of the appearance. Harmony is not restored by thinking thoughts about a situation, but by entering into a state of silence which does not recognize duality. Therein lies a contentedness with being. Chapter 9. Number 1. We are living in a spiritual universe. Number 2. Everything that appears in our awareness is a mental image, a shadow. Don't be tempted to think of it as a reality. Number 3. The body is real, but what we see as a body is a mental image within our own thought. Number 4. Question. What is present where I am? Answer. Integrity, loyalty, fidelity, eternality, immortality, justice, freedom, joy, harmony. Number 5. Only our mental images occupy time and space. Number 6. We let the thoughts come and go while we sit and watch as beholders. All we are looking at are shadows, pictures that flit across the screen. There is no power, substance, law, or cause in them. They are just shadows. Number 7. When we no longer have an image in mind, it is no longer possible to have a picture of it. Number 8. We must learn not to be afraid of unpleasant pictures, because they have no existence as externalized reality, but only as a mental image. Number 9. Whatever your name or nature, if you exist in time or space, you are a mental image, a nothingness. I do not have to fear you, because you have no existence in my or anyone's being. You have existence only in mind, and as a mind existence, you are without form and void. You have no more good or evil in you than the picture in the moving picture screen. You are just a substanceless shadow. Number 10. When we achieve quietness and peace, the mind is no longer functioning. We have transcended mind and risen to the atmosphere of being. Part 3. Chapter 10. Number 1. Spiritual welfare is in no way related to the rigid observance of any forms, but has to do with the state of consciousness developed by the individual. Number 2. People in grosser states of consciousness do not feel the repercussions of karmic law as quickly as those on the spiritual path. Number 3. When we accept the principle that there is neither good or evil in an appearance or condition, then the goal becomes the attainment of the conscious awareness of our true self. Number 4. Connecting with the divine faculties within us, we are living through the soul rather than through the mind and body. Chapter 11. Number 1. We can know how close we are to living by grace by observing to what degree we react to appearances. Number 2. True demonstration is living in the state of pure consciousness. The struggle is with the personal sense of I, me, and mine. In such a state of consciousness, our good on the human plane would be the reflex action of our giving and sharing. Number 4. We cannot live according to a human standard of life and at the same time reap the fruitage of the spiritual life. Number 5. Consciousness goes out invisibly into this world and draws to us everything and everybody necessary for our experience, and we find ourselves drawn to the place where we should be at the right time, receiving that which we should have. Chapter 12. Number 1. There is no way for grace to descend upon us if we are indulging the human way of life. Number 2. If we are willing to lean back on that nothingness, the soul rushes in, appearing in whatever form may be necessary. Number 3. The moment we perceive that there is no power in effect, we lose our fear of it. Number 4. Nothing is power, and nobody is power. Consciousness alone is a creative, maintaining and sustaining power which operates without any help from us. Number 5. Consciousness is power, and we are the instruments through which it flows. Number 6. Exercise. Our response to a problem must be, look, here it is in my mind. I'm looking at it. It is a shadow and cannot be power, so I do not need a power to destroy it or remove it. Number 7. Discordant pictures are just mental images and thought, shadows on a screen. They have no more power and substance than images on a moving picture screen. Number 8. The mental images of life are all taking place inside, not outside, our mind. Number 9. Exercise. Remember, these are mental images and thought. They are projected states of thought out of the vast mental illusion. Then, by abiding in an inner peace, they are dissolved. Number 10. A problem can exist only in the mind, but if we make our mind a vacuum, where would our problem be? Number 11. If we can be perfectly quiet and still within, attempt to remove or escape from any situation, then the flow of consciousness will rush in and there will be freedom. Chapter 13. Number 1. Prayer is a secret and sacred experience taking place within our own consciousness. Number 2. The spiritual fast is an inward communing with consciousness while abstaining from words or thoughts. Chapter 14. Number 1. Relying wholly on words and thoughts allows no opportunity for consciousness to break through into expression, because thought, spoken or written, is merely an effect. Number 2. There is no connecting link to consciousness until there is a conscious awareness of its presence. Number 3. We wait in silence, completely empty as consciousness fills us, fulfills itself and its plan in us. Number 4. The inner world received in our consciousness is the healing agency, quick, sharp and powerful. Number 5. When that inflow comes, which is really an inflow coming to our outer senses from consciousness within, harmony is established and healing takes place, whether for ourselves or for others. Number 6. We sit in complete quiet in the thundering silence and keep our mind stayed within until we feel the inner peace. Number 7. Our prayer must be a listening attitude within. Chapter 15. Number 1. As long as any malice, envy, jealousy, revenge, or hatred is entertained in consciousness, this is a block to experiencing harmony ourselves. Number 2. Our aim is to lose all sense of separation. Number 3. In our inner communion with consciousness, we find ourselves in inner communion with man. Number 4. Exercise. Open your eyes and see with spiritual vision. Number 5. When the state of consciousness that could be guilty of resentment, anger, jealousy, malice dies, there is not only nothing to forgive and nothing to forgive, there is not even a remembrance or a memory. Number 6. When we no longer have any desire for person, place, circumstance or condition, we are rebirthed in the new state of consciousness that realizes our self-completeness. Number 7. Desires separate us from the realization that which we are seeking we already are. Number 8. Exercise. I offer myself as an empty instrument. Chapter 16. Number 1. Consciousness is the one creative and governing principle of each of us and all that is. Number 2. Everything emanates from consciousness. Number 3. This is not a world made up of separate people and things. Number 4. We are one with the one consciousness, and it is flowing out as our individual experience. Number 5. If we are able to penetrate the depths that lie way back of his eyes, we shall see the person in his true identity and behold the reality of his being. Number 6. Every person wears a mask of humanhood, behind which lies the one consciousness, his true identity. Number 7. We owe it to ourselves and to the world not to look at man as a person, but to see him in his true spiritual identity. Number 8. When we are no longer under the hypnotic influence of the pairs of opposites, the world has no power to enslave us. Number 9. When we remove world hypnotism or the belief in two powers from ourselves or any individual, we are free. Number 10. The picture in our mind was never that person. It was a mental concept which we had built. Chapter 17, Number 1. Consciousness cannot give or send us anything. Number 2. There is no such thing as consciousness and. Number 3. We have erroneously accepted the belief that we must draw our good to us, labour for it, and compete with others. Number 4. There is nothing but consciousness appearing as. Number 5. We can stand still and think no thoughts. Just be receptive and let consciousness flow and permeate our being. Chapter 18, Number 1. When we have been touched by the Spirit, it is evident in the light shining forth from our eyes and the glow on our face. Number 2. Our purpose is to be the transparency through which the light expresses itself. Number 3. Resist not and rest in consciousness. Number 4. The transcendental presence, when embraced, encompasses our being and reaches our heart center. Number 5. Learn to be nothing and let the light act in you, through you, as you. It can only function through you when you have become still enough to hear the thunder of silence. Number 6. The highest state of consciousness is when there is no person anymore. There is just I voicing itself. Number 7. The pictures of sense are dissolved as we sit in quietness and stillness, bearing witness within. Chapter 19, Number 1. There is only one enemy, the universal belief that material and mental force can control this world. Number 2. There is no power in the visible world. Number 3. Rest in the knowledge that all opposition destroys itself. Number 4. Standing still is refraining from resisting physical and mental power, relaxing in an ocean of peace. Then the discord destroys itself and disappears out of our experience. Number 5. When we have stood in complete silence and permitted spirit to permeate mind and body, it prepares the way. Number 6. Rest in the silence that created the universe and let it perform its function.